Good morning, everybody. I'm Larry Weissoon. If you enjoy real-world hunting and fishing talk, you're really going to enjoy listening to my good friend, Luke Clayton, and his guest for the next hour.
This is David Fox, and welcome to Outdoors with Luke Clayton and Friends. Luke has been a recognized outdoors writer for the past 3 decades and writes for a host of outdoor publications. Luke pens a weekly newspaper outdoors column that appears in over 40 Texas newspapers. Luke is on the pro staff of Pyramyd Air, your one-stop shop for everything air gun related. Smokin Tex electric smokers and AGM Global Vision, maker of an awesome line of thermal hunting scopes and spotters. Feel free to contact Luke through his website, catfishradio.org. Now let's join Luke and his guests for this week's show.
Well, thank you, guys, and it is Campfire Talk time with Mr. Larry Weissoon. Larry's standing by down there in southeast Texas, and we have a remote campfire today, don't we, Larry?
We do. It won't be long before we'll be back together and get around a campfire coming up here for too very long, actually, like next week kind of thing. But I want to remind everybody how thrilled we are to be with them, and we need to thank DSC Conservation Education, Hunter Advocacy, Taurus, that makes the Raging Hunter handguns that I use, Mossberg, and I want to come back to them in just a little bit. But VINEYARDMAX, great products. We're about to put out some VINEYARDMAX products on a new property that we're looking at up in North Texas, and Stealth Vision. I want to couple that with some of the Mossberg things that we're going to talk about. And then also, of course, Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. And the reason I bring them up last, Luke, is, it's hunting seasons. In a lot of different ways. Turkey seasons are either open or about to open in a lot of different places. And also, oh my gosh, Mossberg, I know you got a Mossberg shotgun that you've been using for a while. And I still got an old model 835 that I've had for a long time that, I'm going to put to use, maybe not so much for a turkey, but maybe some other things that I'm after right now.
You bet. Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, it is turkey season. Here by the house, I live in Kaufman County, and 6 or 7 years ago, they stocked the Rio's turkeys here on a big ranch that's about 2 miles from where I live. Well, those turkeys, the Rio birds have right. Some people think they should have stocked Eastern. I get asked that all the time, but we're kind of on the fringe of Eastern.
Right, kind of that integrate area.
Yes, sir. And they stocked a bunch of Rios, and every year we see more poults, and I've even had hens come in. 2 hens year before last came in our yard just looking for a nesting spot, early about this time of the year. But my friend Kenneth Shepard over there, he's right on the edge of that big ranch, and I've got a feeder over there for hogs, and the turkeys are hitting it regularly. So you can't hunt them. There's no season, but you can sure film them and you can call them, And I can't wait. Probably next week I'm going to be putting a decoy out over there. Really, actually close to where the same area where I hunt the hogs over there. And last 2 or 3 years I've done it, had a lot of fun. Hit that old box call and those gobblers will sound off back in the woods, and you can get some really good footage. Of course, no shotguns, just cameras, But it sure is fun, Larry, doing that,
It really is. I have not shot a turkey during springtime now in a long time. I used to hunt them really hard years ago, not only in Texas, but several of the other states as well. But, it's still fun calling them. And really right where I live in this area, there are not very many turkeys. Now, there's a Lake Somerville that sits up kind of north of us up here. And around that state park, they have a bunch of turkeys. And so my intentions are here in the next few days is, like you say, take that old box call. I've got several of them that I have, and an old slate, type call, which are my favorites. And I'm going to go up there and see if I can't get a couple of good pictures. Every once in a while I need a turkey picture or, some footage for our a sportsman's life kind of thing, just to use as what people call B-roll. And so I think I'm going to hit up there and do some of that as well, too.
Well, good. I hope you can take that video camera, and I'll try to get some here in where I live, and you can get some footage where you live, and maybe get get our buddy Jeff Rice to compile all that together, and we'd have a non-hunting, just a turkeys interacting with decoys and coming into the calls. And, really it's hard to hunt, especially turkey, and try to film. I've tried it. I mean, I guess an experienced filmer could maybe get it done, or it's hard to hunt them and film at the same time, especially turkeys, because, my gosh, you reach over there to hit that hit that to-go button, and that bird's head's looking stuck up in the air looking at you. It's a real challenge. With a cameraman that knows what he's doing, it's not so hard to do, is it?
It's a little bit easier. But the reason I started laughing is when you were talking about that, they can assimilate what they see like 50 times faster than what you and I can. And what some people forget when they're trying to film is that turkeys can see color. Mm-hmm. And so I remember as you were talking, Wayne Carlton, who just passed away not very long ago, years and years ago, Wayne came to South Texas, and we went turkey hunting, and we'd get a call. He'd get this bird coming in, he's on a string, and all of a sudden that bird would just stop and, and turn around and run away. And for the longest time, neither he or I could kind of halfway figure out what was going on. And then one of us happened to just turn around and look at the cameraman, and that camera that he was using had a pretty good sized red light on it that would indicate when it was being, when somebody had pressed record. And this turkey come in and see that red light, and rather it was stop and then go kind of thing. And they didn't hang around very long. But so we finally put a Band-Aid over the top of that dead red light, and guess what? Then the birds started coming in on us.
They are wary critters. So many times looking back on different turkey hunts, some were successful where I actually killed a turkey, and you remember those especially, and some of them seem so easy. Hit the box call and get back up on a big tree, kind of break your silhouette, and here comes the bird, and you shoot him. Excuse me. But that hadn't always happened. I was hunting up on a ranch. Actually, it was the Dale River Ranch with Randy Douglas about 5 years ago, 6 maybe. And it's the strangest thing. I was hunting actually in a pop-up blind because there was a hilltop with there wasn't a lot of cover for you to hide in. And top of a hill there, a few oaks scattered around, but got in this blind. And there was some cedar trees on the outside, on the one side. I called and called and called. And, sometimes gobblers will just hammer right back, and they'll come 100 yards, and they'll stop and gobble again, and you can just track them like they were on a GPS, by the sound. Well, I called and called, and it was probably 10:30 in the morning. Nothing. It was at a spot where turkeys had been frequenting quite a bit, So I kept on calling, and I'll swear this is no exaggeration. There was a thick cedar tree on one side of this pop-up blind, and with some low limbs, you could see through the tree pretty good, the lower part of that cedar tree. No kidding, within 15 feet of me, a big old gobbler. He had honestly had a 9 or 10 inch beard. He was a grown gobbler. I didn't know he was anywhere in that part of the world. He sounded off with a gobble that almost shook the tent. And I know if you could have filmed me, that would have been the world's funniest, because I had a shotgun and that gobbler, I just, I had my back. I was looking out the front of the blind, not in the cedar tree right behind me. That's where the bird was. I had a window that was down in that pop-up blind. I thought, oh, my God, here he is. And I could see that big beard dangling down, and he really was, I'm talking about 15 feet away. That's how close that bird was. And he kind of heard, or he knew something was up, but he wasn't really spooked. And I slowly turned around. I put the shotgun straight up in the air where I could spin, swing around, eased it real slow into position into that window. And the gobbler would occasionally just act a little weird, like he knew something was up. But anyway.
But he wasn't sure what was going on.
He didn't know what was going on. So, Randy Douglas we still laugh about this. that bird got right around, and I saw a little opening, in that cedar tree between those lower branches, and I had to back up to get to. I didn't want to poke the barrel out the window because I knew that'd spook him. So I backed up in that blind, and I was watching his head and neck. Well, he was on the move, and bam, I shot, and I was tracking him. He was moving a little bit, and I didn't see there was about a 4-inch limb on that cedar tree that I blew in half. and Randy, of course, when he heard me shoot, he wasn't far. He was hunting a few hundred yards away, probably. He come driving up. You get him, Luke? And I said, "You got to see this." I didn't touch a feather on that gobbler. I really did. I watched him run away. I didn't have and it did. That old tree, I guarantee you, is still half that limb is gone. But things like that. You remember the one that you called up that came from half a mile, you think, and shot him, but you also remember stuff like that when you look back on turkey hunts, don't you?
You really do. And I was listening to one of the things that came to mind. These days we have got extra full, extra full, and extra full turkey chokes. And with the ammunition that we're shooting now at the shot shells, I mean, years ago, my deal was I was going to shoot a turkey unless I got him within 20 yards, regardless of what I was using. And sometimes I was using a rifle, which was legal in Texas. But these days with with those constricted chokes that we have on 410s, 20 gauge, and a bunch of other things, it's just amazing. With what the how tight those chokes, that constriction is, to where it's like shooting a bullet sometimes. And when you do that, you better be on that animal or that turkey, because if you're not exactly where you want that shot to go, in the neck and the head, you're going to miss that bird.
That's true. I learned that up in Oklahoma we'll talk. I've recounted that to you and our friends listening probably a time or two, but missed 2 big old eastern birds. Missed them. And I patterned that shotgun when I got home. It was such I don't hunt with those chokes anymore. I use them modified a lot, because out to 35, 40 yards, that'll get the job done, and it'll open up enough where if you're in dense cover, that you'll make a lethal shot. Folks, I've got to tell you this. Before Larry and I started this segment of Campfire Talk, we always, what do we wanted to talk about today? We were going to talk about deer, but Larry, as often happens, we get on a different topic and it works out okay. So it is turkey season, so we'll talk about deer next time. How about that?
Absolutely. And where I was heading with some of the things I was going to do, I was going to talk about trying this is an ideal time to shoot coyotes and bobcats.
Yes.
So we'll put that on the back burner.
Well, no. Let's
next time.
Breaking news from Mr. Whitetail, folks. That is a fact, and that those are heavy with fawns now. 6 weeks, 2 months. May.
Usually that May it will start having fawns, and so again, right now, if you're out turkey hunting and you're not getting turkeys come in, I'd strongly suggest grabbing a little mouth blown call. If you don't do anything else, a little C3 varmint call from Burnham Brothers, and use it and shoot a coyote if you can, because you're going to save some turkeys and you're going to save some fawns, and same thing with bobcats as well too.
Exactly. Well, Larry, good point, and I hope a lot of our friends heed that. I'm going to do that myself. And next week, we're going to be right here back with everybody, right?
Yes, we will.
Folks, I want to introduce you to VINEYARDMAX. Now, this is an awesome deer attractant, a food attractant that's made with hammer-milled grape skin, dried hammer-milled grape skins. It has a mixture of rice bran and also corn chops. Very effective. Deer can smell the scent of grapes from a long way, and it brings them in. I've used it in West Texas out with Larry Weissoon, and we were out there where deer are not even exposed to grapes, and they came right in. Also, VINEYARDMAX has a very good line of game and fish feeders. Check them out online, vineyardmax.net. Friends, I want to tell you about an awesome camping destination, Wind Point Park on Lake Tawakoni. It's over on the far east side, kind of the northeast side of the lake. It's a pristine park. You can go there and view, I think they estimated a couple of hundred deer on that couple of hundred acres there. Cabins, beautiful RV park, fishing piers, docks. It's got everything you'd want in an outdoor destination. Check them out online at windpointparktx.com. Well, friends, Mr. Larry Weissoon is going to tell you about the finest hunting optics that we have ever found.
Look, these are called Stealth Vision. They come from Crockett, Texas. Dr. John McCall developed them. They're 34-millimeter tubes as opposed to the narrower tubes, so more light transmission. They have a little green light that comes on. That scope is leveled because that's when you want to pull the trigger. They have an optional lighted reticle as well, too, and a whole lot of other products, and folks can learn more about them by going to stealthvision.com.
Folks, this segment is made possible by Smokin Tex electric smokers that I've been using a long, long time, CatfishPro, catfishing baits and catfish supplies, Ultrimatic Feeders, and AGM Global Vision, maker of the spotters and thermal scopes that I hunt with. Well, friends, our next guest is a great friend of mine, Mr. Jeff Rice. You've heard Jeff visit with us many times on Catfish Radio here through the years. Jeff puts together, compiles, produces, if you will, our show that's called A Sportsman's Life. It's on Carbon TV. A lot of people watch it on Carbon TV, and then it's also on YouTube where people can easily find it. Jeff, thank you, buddy, for being with us.
Oh, I was glad to join you, Luke. Good morning to you, sir.
Yes, and all of our folks all over the place listening this morning. Let's you and I recap a fishing trip that we enjoyed yesterday on Lake Fork, and while it's really fresh in our brain. How about us doing that?
Let's talk about it.
We had a good time. So I'll kind of set the stage. A pretty new friend of ours, Mr. Glenn Miller, you look up fisherman in the dictionary, not just for catfish, but for just about anything in fresh water. Glenn's picture should be there. He's just a great guy. But he invited us to fish with him for catfish out at Lake Fork. And people think a fork is largemouth bass, and rightly so, and crappie, but it's also a great catfish fishery. And we did some trot line. He had some trot lines that he set out, and then we rod and reel fish. And I tell you what, we started the day off on running the trot lines. He had baited with live perch, and we did. That was pretty exciting right there, Jeff. You know.
Oh, that sure was. I mean, he had several nice fish on the trot lines, and that's just fun to do that kind of stuff. I know in the past you and I have done some trot lining, and it's just fun to do, and it's a great way to catch fish. I mean, boy, the fish he caught on those trot lines were beautiful fish.
They were blues and one big old channel cat. I think the biggest blue was, 15, 17 pounds, something like that. Very, very good eating size fish. They get much bigger than that. Well, we release them, the big ones. But that one was somewhere in that neighborhood. And Phil Zimmerman that was with us, Phil was trying to get some fish for a family. He occasionally has a big fish fry for the Zimmermans, and there's a bunch of them. And so he's now well stocked with fillets, and we all are. I kept one of the blues that, I don't know, might have weighed, 8 pounds, but it was plenty for what I needed. And then you had a couple of them that you put it probably in the freezer right now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it couldn't have been a prettier day. I mean, it was just absolutely gorgeous out there. Started out a little cool when we first got in that boat in the morning and trucked out there, but that sun warmed things up real quick. And of course, after we picked the fish off the trout line, we dropped some bait down there, and we proceeded to catch a whole bunch of channel catfish. And man, what a beautiful day, huh, buddy?
Yep, it was. And that might help some people. We were fishing for channel cat. Actually, we tried some rod and reel blue cat fishing with cut shad, but the bite was just it was not. They weren't real active. We had some pickups and lost a couple, but I kept in. Glenn knows that we like to action fishing, and channel catfishing is action fish. I mean, you are steadily somebody's catching a fish usually when you get them turned on. But we he tied the bow of the boat to a stick up, and then used just a pole rod and poked it down in the water. That's pretty common for shallow water fishing. Of course, there's power poles on bass boats, but just a pipe. Stick it down in there, and you can hammer it down, whatever, just to hold, and tie the back end of the boat to that. And that was key to keep the boat stable, because we were, you don't want to be floating around. And then bait it with range cubes. And it happened, Jeff, like it usually happens. At first, not really, you'll get a bite now and then, but as that, we were using Stick It Bait, Magic Bait Company, and then using some concoction that Glenn had made up. But the longer you fish with that, the more scent that gets in the water. It seems like the better the fishing is, doesn't it, to me?
Yeah, within probably 30 to 45 minutes, we started to have a bunch of the channel catfish come in, because they get a whiff of that bait in the water, and the range cubes, and of course the bait we're fishing with, and man, all of a sudden it turned on, and we caught, like you said, we like action, but we like eater fish too.
You bet. Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about a catfish, I love to hook them and fight them and catch them, but part of a catfishing trip is after when the fish hits the oil, cooking oil,
Mm-hmm.
and we left with plenty of all of us. I mean, for a bunch of fish fries, and there's a couple of ways to rig up. These fish were not. Well, I won't say they not. Some of them would grab it and nail it hard, but every fish I caught was just what I call mouthing the bait. I mean, you needed to watch that rod and need to watch your line, and at the slightest tug, set the hook. Well, we were fishing with number 4 treble hooks, and the ones that I had, I think we tied one on yours, was like the bait keeper with a little wire around the shank of the hook. That kind of helps in a way. You don't have to have that, but I think it does help keep that punch bait on the hook, and plus, it just kind of, I don't think it impedes the fish getting hooked, really. I don't think it doesn't seem to bother the fish. I don't think they worry about that. They're just after that punch bait. So that's a pretty good tip, using those kind of hooks,
Yes, and of course, when you're fishing, certain times, like you said, they'll hammer it. There's a fish there.
Yeah.
Then there was times where you feel just a slight tick, and you need immediately at that point to set the hook, because if you didn't, you miss a fish. That's how light some of them bit. But you really got to focus on that. It's when you're out fishing. They don't always just hammer it.
No.
Sometimes it's a super light bite, but we figured it out, and boy, we hammered them.
That's a very good tip. But you think, well, wait a minute, do I want to? Because when you jerk that hard, you're probably going to lose your bait. But that little movement of the line, if jerk back pretty hard, and that's when you make a hook set a lot of times on those catfish and boat them. Well, folks, Jeff had his camera going. He was ready. Our Sportsman's Life is always a current show, and it's very often it's what we're doing that week. And Jeff said, I need one for this week, and that you can watch the show. Jeff filmed it while we were out there. And you got a little of the trot line action, the blue cat action, and the channel cat fishing on the video. Folks can watch that right now, can't they, Jeff?
Absolutely. Got a little of everything on there, and it just shows how much fun we had on that adventure with Glenn. And I invite folks to go out to YouTube and just type in the search engine A Sportsman's Life, and you will find our show. And then for those that stream TV, like Roku or Fire Stick, it's one of them. Just go to Carbon TV on your Roku or your streaming channels. or you can just type in carbontv.com on your computer, and you can find our show, A Sportsman's Life. And yeah, you can actually watch the adventure we literally had yesterday. Now it's out there, so go enjoy.
You bet. On your cell phone, carbontv.com, or anything you can do on a computer nowadays, you can do on your cell phone, can't you, Jeff? You can watch it. I listen to it quite often. I watch our show on my cell phone when I've got a little slack time. That bite for channel catfish is, we were in water 6-7 foot deep, and some people are catching them in water deeper than that, but I don't think, from what I've learned, I don't think water depth is, if I were going to go out in a boat and go fishing for channel cat, I'd be fishing water around 10 foot, 8 to 10 foot deep, something like where we were. But, people are catching them at all different depths, but that's a pretty average depth right now, I think, for to start out looking for channel catfish, Jeff, somewhere around 8 to 10 foot,
Yeah, well, they're going to be moving and are currently moving up into the creeks as well. They're spawning and stuff, and so shallow water, it is good. The bite's going to be on, here from the next probably at least 30 to 60 days. Probably it's going to be pretty good in shallow water. So something to focus on is just check shallow water, but check different depths. When you're not catching them at one depth, move. That's my tip to get out there and check different depths. You never know where they're at.
Then you put that chum out in the water, some soured grain or some range cubes, and chances are, I don't care if you're in right now, if you're in 4 foot or 20 foot, you're probably going to catch some channel catfish. They just love that. Yep. Jeff, here we've got an interesting guest coming up in our next segment, Mr. Tucker Slack. He's with. You're going to enjoy listening to Tucker. He's with the Plateau Land and Wildlife Management Company, and he's going to share some information with us about, putting your land on a wildlife management exemption for taxes and things like that. That's what his company does. So I appreciate you being with us. It's fun. It's almost as much fun talking about our fishing trip as it was actually doing it. So thanks for being with us, Jeff.
You bet. Let's get together and we'll cook some up.
Darn right. Folks, I want to tell you about an awesome destination for camping, just a getaway place, some very good fishing up on the upper end of Lake Livingston. It's River Rat Resort. You can go online to riverratresort.com. Check it all out. It's an awesome website there, but there's RV sites for RVs. There's tent camping right on the river, cabins there. It is a beautiful park. And I fished down in that area for many, many years. I probably first started fishing there 30 years ago. But you can fish the river. Lake Livingston is a well-known fishing lake. If you don't like to fish, which I bet you do, but if you don't, it's a great place just to get away from the hustle bustle of the big city. You can call 936-277-5495. That's 936-277-5495 and make reservations. But first, go online there to riverratresort.com. Check it out. I want to tell you about a one-stop shop for everything related to game feeders and fish feeders, Ultrimatic Feeders. I've been using components and feeders from Ultrimatic Feeders for 20-something years, I guess. They have the remote, which you can remotely activate your feeder with, the timer, which is the most simple timer that I've ever found on a game feeder, and then the eliminator. Check these out. They are worked on centrifugal force, and they seal off the corn supply so coons and squirrels can't get to the corn. Check them out. Ultrimatic Feeders, you could go online to ultrimaticfeeders.com. Folks, let's talk a little outdoor cooking. Let me tell you about an electric smoker that I've been using for 15 years, I guess. Smokin Tex electric smokers. If you're tired of staying up all night keeping that wood fire burning when you're barbecuing, give Smokin Tex a try. They're made to last a lifetime. You can check them out at smokintex.com. That's SMOKINTEX.com. For seasonings, anything to do with outdoor cooking, all kind of jerky seasonings, sausage seasonings, Butcher Packer Supply. That's butcherpackersupply.com. I think the website is butcher-packer.com. Friends, this segment is made possible by Platinum Cadillac and Chevrolet in Terrell, Texas. Stop by and visit with my buddy, Mr. Justin Rudd, and his team of experts, and let them put you in a new Chevy pickup or a Cadillac or whatever you might be in the market for. Also, the Choctaw Hunting Lodge up in southeast Oklahoma. Check them out at ChoctawHuntingLodge.com. Also made possible by Pyramyd Air, your one-stop shop for everything airgun related. Well, friends, our next guest is Mr. Tucker Slack. Now, Tucker is the senior wildlife biologist for Plateau Wildlife Management Company. And you're going to learn some things, I think, and I think I'm going to learn some things talking with Tucker about things like exemptions for your land, tax exemptions and things like that. Tucker, thank you very much, sir, for being with us.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Yes, sir. Well, you're the senior wildlife biologist for Plateau Wildlife Management Company. So, a region of the eastern region of the state is kind of your home grounds, if you will. But the services that your company offers are amazing to me, and it answers questions that your company would supply information that would help people get say tax exemptions, and that's what I'd kind of like us to focus on. I mean, there's so much we could. I think we're gonna take the rest of our show, folks, with Tucker. It's probably going to take that to get you informed on all the stuff that they can do for you. But say you have 10 acres or 1,000 acres, whatever, and you're not under an wildlife exemption. Now, that's one of the many things that your company can help with, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. So it's the wildlife, it's actually called an exemption by almost everyone, the ag exemption, but it's technically a different way that they value the land for taxing purposes. And so rather than put it on a per acre basis for the market value, they base it off of the productivity value of whatever that agricultural activity that the person's conducting. So if it's cattle, they've got a number of what would a cattle producer expect to be able to make, and they base the value of the land off of that production. It could be timber, hay. So there's this large suite of what they call 1D1 open space agricultural valuations. And so it's a really great way to save on taxes because they have a very different way of valuing the land. And I think we've all seen the market values rise quite a lot, and these agricultural values are generally pretty stable. And so the wildlife management is another option. It was passed in 95, and so it was Proposition 11 on the ballot. The people overwhelmingly supported it, which I think speaks of Texans and how we feel about our state and our land. And so since then, it's just kind of been rolling like a snowball down a hill. And it started in earnest probably in the hill country. That's where our company started. And so kind of an interesting story. The gentleman that started this company were instrumental probably from the mid 80s. And my dates may be off because I was very young then. But it was this push to get wildlife management as a tax valuation. The real impetus wasn't for wildlife. It was just for first to keep people on the land and to preserve open space land in the state, because people could see how quickly our state was growing, how much land was being converted, how much land was being cut up, chopped up, whether it be farms, ranches. And so they started that process. It was a group of folks. And in 95, it passed. And so they kind of puffed out their chests and said, man, we did it. And then by 97, they said, oh, no, we've created a need. So they developed Plateau Land and Wildlife Management to fill that need, because there was a greater need than what existing folks could handle, as far as the landowners that needed that type of service.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty. So the people that started the company were instrumental in the whole process, right? I mean,
yes, sir.
Yeah.
From start to finish. So, and they're still engaged in our company. One of them was an attorney, and one of them was a wildlife biologist on a big private ranch. And so they started the company just with after having seen and helped be a part of creating that need. And so initially it was going to fall all on the Texas Parks and Wildlife staff. Well, they're honestly few and far between, overworked, just not enough hours in the day to serve as many people as this has created. You know, this is really, I think it's probably 7 million acres or thereabouts that are in wildlife management tax valuation in Texas now.
That's a lot of land. That's amazing. So I want to get back into this in depth here in just a second, but that's one of the many things that the company, I mean, I can see how your company would be beneficial to definitely to landowners, but say people that had long-term leases on land as far as management and things like that, wildlife management. I know that's what your specialty is, Tucker, but you know that it's a lot of other things that the company does rather than just help people facilitate the exemptions, right?
Yes, sir. We do actually offer quite a few goods and services. You know, we carry products, feeders, and nest boxes and things of that nature. Rainwater collection tables are pretty popular. So we've got a suite of products, and the service side of it. You know, we can do turnkey services for folks where we can go manage everything, file all the paperwork, keep all the records. And so, yeah, we do quite a lot. We treat fire ants, we treat brush, different things like that.
Yeah, and like I looked at the website, which is, let's see, plateauwildlife.com, I believe it is. Is that right? Or is
yes, sir.
Yeah, plateauwildlife.com. Yeah. I think I was on there earlier looking at all the like, you know, cedars, juniper, removing those. I mean, they're a problem in many areas of Texas, but that's one of the things, right? Somebody calls you up and said, "Look, I don't know what to do with these things. I need to get rid of them."
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We can treat a lot of things, and if we don't do it, we generally know good, reputable folks that can help them. And so it's kind of a resource, just having somebody to help you figure out first what to do or what you need to do, and then second how to get it done. One of the big ones this time of year that our folks are really getting into and do quite a tremendous amount of are songbird surveys. And so that's interesting for a lot of folks, regardless of whether they were in wildlife tax valuation. You know, they'd like a specialist to come out and survey their avian,
you
know, the birds, and to see, you know, it's a point count where an ornithologist comes out there and documents all the different birds that they see and hear, produce a really nice report. And so a lot of people are really interested in that, just to start learning about the birds.
You know, Tucker, several years ago, there's a Texas Extension Service, I guess it just has a Master Naturalist program. And I went through that in Dallas, this has been 6 or 7 years ago. And, you know, there would be people, ornithologists or foresters or, you know, biologists like yourself, you know, wildlife biologists. It was a pretty intensive course. It took, I don't know, several months to complete it. But it's amazing. You can learn a lot through that course of the basic stuff, but it's amazing. You mentioned the ornithologist, the birds. To this day, I mean, I tried to study it and learn it all in that period, all the different birds. But I go out, I know the birds, just keeping just birds in mind. I know a lot of the species when I see them. I don't know the names of them, though. But,
yes, sir.
You know, I've got a daughter that can identify all of them. She'll say, "Oh, that's a nuthatch," or whatever. And I said, "Well, that's a bird I've been looking at for 100 years, but I didn't know the exact name." So that would appeal to a lot of people, to know what kind of birds are on their land. I mean, I bet it does too, you know.
Oh, yes, sir. It's just a way to spark an interest, I think for me, it really is a lifelong pursuit of learning, and whatever gets you interested in that is for me, it was hunting and fishing and being outdoors. But the older I've gotten, the more time I've spent, I just realized that I love to be outdoors, and there's so much opportunity to observe and learn. And so I think people get excited about that.
They do, for a fact. So if say, for instance, you have 10 acres, or just an arbitrary number, 10 acres, 15 acres, and you want to develop a wildlife exemption from it. And your primary goal, to be quite honest, is to save money on taxes. That's one of the goals. The other thing is you love the outdoors, you love wildlife, and you'd like to see more wildlife on your place, on your little tract of land. Could you do something with a smaller acreage like that?
Yes, sir. So the way that it is actually very structured, and there's a lot of misconceptions about minimum acreage requirements. Essentially, if the property had a current 1D1 open space ag valuation, so if it was in timber, hay, grazing, even beekeeping, which is on some of those smaller ones, then you could roll it into wildlife management. And one of the nice things about it is it was written and designed in a way that it's flexible. And so some of the requirements, obviously you want your management goals to meet the land itself. And so that's where someone would come in like us. We'd come talk to the landowner, look at the land, assess it, and see what would be suitable. And then some of the activities, for instance, like songbird boxes, well, they've got intensity standards that are statewide, but they're done through ecoregion. And so if you're in the piney woods, it may be different than if you're in the hill country or along the coast. They have a different set of guidelines for songbird boxes, just because of the different habitats and the different requirements. But yeah, you can, as long as it didn't decrease in size in the previous year, then there's no minimum acreage standard. And so I've literally written wildlife plans on properties that were a couple of acres, but it has to do with the history of the land. And so let's say you had a larger property and you cut out a piece and sold it, well, then that decreased in size. So then there's a range of acreage that the counties can implement. And that range is provided to them from the comptroller and Parks and Wildlife. And so for most of East Texas, I believe it's if the property was decreased in size, it has to be between 12.5 and 16.7 acres. But that only applies in that year. And so sometimes what people will do on those smaller acreage properties, you just have to reestablish ag for 1 year, then it becomes eligible. And so we have folks that may have 10 acres they pulled out or bought, and let's say it was a big hay pasture. Well, they've got to implement agriculture for 1 year, so they put beekeeping on it, apiary use. And then that following year, they can then transition to wildlife management.
I got you. Well, that's interesting. I think that the information that you've given us too is probably going to ring a bell with a lot of people that's been on the wire thinking, well, I've got 12 acres or whatever. And I actually have several friends in that situation that's got small acreage, and they've asked me, and I said, well, I know you can go to Texas Parks and Wildlife and find it, but the niche that you folks do is, you've got the information, but you've also got the people to implement this stuff, right? I mean, to get out on the ground and make it happen.
Yes, sir, we do. And another part of what we do is education. It's unfortunate that this thing came about, but there's not really a good mechanism to these appraisal districts to learn about it. The information's all there on Parks and Wildlife site, but it's complex enough to where, and it's hidden enough to where there's just not knowledge. It's kind of new, it's kind of different. And so I think we're able to help and build relationships with these appraisal districts so they understand it better and understand that it actually is very structured and make them comfortable with it so that people can do it, because it's legal and it's a wonderful use of the land. The values, the reason they had to set it up that way is there's no real good way to quantify value for an acre of land. There's so many benefits aside from the wildlife just ecological type benefits, and so in order to make this change several years ago, they had to basically, it previously has to be ag because they had a way to value it, and it needed to be revenue neutral so that the appraisals weren't losing money. And so that's kind of how it ended up. But we can help as little or as much as folks want. We do have folks who engage us just on the front end to try to help get it right. We have folks who just have us come out and do consulting visits, about maybe it's some one or two specific issues they have that they just need some guidance on. And then we have folks who engage us to do a turnkey service where we go out there, we take care of all the activities, we document everything, we implement everything, we file all the forms and reports, and so we can do as much or as little as folks need.
That's awesome, Tucker. Tell folks how to go online, and that your website is awesome. I spent some time on it just looking, so I'd kind of have myself briefed for questions that I thought most people might be interested in. But how do they learn more about plateau wildlife management there?
Well, you can definitely go to our website at www.plateauwildlife.com, and it's actually got a ton of information about the company, about some of the services that we offer, contact information. One of the big things I think that folks do is get on there and say, do I qualify? That's a big question. Does my property qualify? And so there's a lot of resources on that website to help you get good information about it.
Good deal. Just go to the website then and look through it and see what might. And a lot of the questions there's even like a more or less a question and answer thing on there too. So that's good. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Some of the more common questions that folks have are listed on there. And gives you some answers. So, pretty neat resource for people that are interested in wildlife in general, but particularly in the wildlife management tax valuation.
Well, Tucker, I really appreciate you being with us, and you touched on we kind of scattergunned a lot of information, but it's some things that people are still going to have a lot of questions, but I would refer them to the plateauwildlife.com website, and they can, a lot of the questions can be answered there. Then there's phone numbers where they can call you. And I want to thank Tucker. I want to thank Mr. Paul Moore, who's a good friend of mine. With I know that you know Paul, and he's a great guy. I appreciate Paul hooking us up because you've touched on some things that to me I think is going to be really important to a lot of folks.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I appreciate that too, because it almost seems like this is one of the best kept secrets, particularly throughout large areas of our state. And so getting the information to folks and allowing people to take care of their land in a way that makes sense to them. I think a lot of these traditional numbers for agriculture are pretty intense. And so I think there's a cost to the land with that. And the other thing that I was thinking about is, particularly with timber, let's say you're raising timber. Well, you're depending upon someone to come in there, a forester, to come in there and do your thinning or to do your harvest. Well, the nature of how that currently operates is people fall through the cracks on some of these smaller acreages. If you don't have so many acres, you can't really get their attention, and you're depending on them. Well, wildlife puts people in the driver's seat. And so it's things that you can do, things that you can implement. And honestly, most of the folks I meet with are already doing a number of these things anyway, just because it's good land stewardship. And so it's something that most folks who own land or care about the land can really get behind.
You bet. Well, Tucker, thank you very much, buddy, for being with us, and want to get you on from time to time and share some more knowledge and information. How about that?
That sounds wonderful. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
For about the past decade, I've been hunting editor for Airgun Hobbyist magazine. I think the only magazine devoted strictly to airgun shooting and hunting in the country. Well, in that length of time, I've learned quite a bit about big bore air guns and smaller calibers too. A spot to go to that if you're interested in air guns, you need to know about Pyramyd Air. The website is PYRAMYD, pyramydair.com. They have anything and everything you need, from the guns themselves, the big bores or the smaller calibers, to the accessories. Just remember PyramydAir.com, and there's a number when you get on the website if you need to call and talk to somebody. Give them a buzz, and they can fill you in on little details that you might need to know about shooting or hunting with big bore air guns. While you're on the website there, I'd like you to check out the big bore air gun that I've done a great deal of hunting with. It's the Seneca Dragon Claw, 50 caliber, pressures up to 3,000 psi, and it looks like a conventional rifle. Wooden stock. I think you'll like the appearance, and I know you'll like the performance. It shoots not only bullets, but also air bolts as well, tipped with a broadhead. Check it out. It's the Seneca Dragon Claw.
The snowflakes fall as winter comes, and time just seems to fly.
Friends, this segment is brought to us by CVA Muzzleloaders. In my opinion, the very best muzzleloaders in the world, the ones that I shoot. You can check them out online, CVA.com. AGM Global Vision, maker of the Rattler and the Adder that I use. You can check them out online too, agmglobalvision.com. Kuby's Wild Game Processing and Kuby's Restaurant in Dallas. And VINEYARDMAX, maker of some awesome deer attractant and some very fine game feeders and fish feeders, located down in Nacogdoches, Texas. Check them out at vineyardmax.net. Well, friends, we are back, and I tell you what, Mr. Tucker Slack, I enjoyed visiting with him. I learned some things, and I bet you did too. But let's go up to Texoma right now, Lake Texoma, up on the Texas-Oklahoma border, and let's check in with Mr. Bill Carey with Striper Express. Bill, how in the world are you doing up there, buddy?
Well, good morning, Luke, and all y'all out in radio land. Things are good at Lake Texoma.
Good deal. Well, I tell you what, our previous guest, Mr. Tucker there, I picked up a few things. You're a landowner, and I bet some stuff he brought forth and put in the limelight would probably be of interest to a lot of folks that own land, you know?
Yes, sir. Always good stuff.
Yes, sir. Let's talk about stripers. So here is early April, and I think I keep up with what's going on up there because I love to catch those stripers with y'all. The males, a lot of the males had been up the river. The spawn is what we're talking about, friends. But the males had went first. You said even a couple weeks ago, they were quite a few up there, right?
Oh, yeah. They go first. Folks, these fish lay eggs in moving water like a salmon and a white bass. They don't make a bed. So if you have a good flow of water, and with our secret, the salinity, we will make a lot of babies dropping those eggs in flowing water.
Let them grow up to be these big old hard fighting stripers. You know, that's why Texoma is what Texoma is the natural spawn. Okay, so right now, April here, the topwater bite, which is something that everybody gets fired. Who wouldn't want to go fishing and catch them on topwater? That's a big draw of fishing for stripers. It is. Last year, as I remember, by mid-April, the topwater was going very dependable last year, you know?
Surprised us. Yes, sir. Surprised us all, because I've been telling people for years, it starts the last week of April, pretty much guaranteed by May 1st. But yes, it did. It started mid-month, and that was just great because we will fill up our boats before we fill up March and April.
Yeah, May. Now, May is the month that's known for topwater, the striper.
Yes, sir.
And now, Bill, the reason for that, tell our friends why. It has to do with the shad, with the bait. I know that, but describe that why it's so. That's the time of year when it's so good, you know.
Okay. Yes, sir. We have a 7-month season, and it starts. This is not your traditional summer schooling, big schools in the middle of the lake. We go up, just like bass fishing, into shallow water. Most of it's around our islands right here. We're right in front of these islands, and we find a deep water access where the fish can move up in shallow and then leave. And what happens is, this time of year, the water warms enough and the shad move into the shallows and the fish follow. You may not see them. You might have a swirl. You might have a bust. You might have a bird show you. But I bet 8 out of 10 times we're just doing it because we know where they should be, and we're just blind casting. We call it blind casting.
Yep. Yeah, that comes from years of being there, being on the water, and practice and experience. Yep. Top baits that you're going to be using for the top waters this month? I know.
My favorite go-to, cotton cordell pencil popper.
Yeah,
that is my favorite bait. But that whopper plopper.
Yes, yeah.
And that has turned out to be a wonderful bait because these big old 6-inch plugs, when you're popping with your wrist and reel at the same time, people aren't used to it, and it'll wear their wrist out.
Yeah.
So this whopper plopper is just a straight retrieve, and I know you like that bait a lot.
Love that whopper plopper, yes. Who makes that bait, Bill?
Well, I'm having a bad brain here. I'm trying to remember. Berkeley, our sponsor, makes one, and it's called the Chapo. That's what our sponsor.
And that's the one. That's the bait that I use when I'm up there with El Chapo or Chapo.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we call it El Chapo, but it is the Chapo.
Chapo. Yeah, we call it. We got our own name for it, but I'll name it this. It is a very effective lure, and it's fun to fish too. But man, you throw those things out there and just start bringing it in, moving a bunch of water on the surface, and my gosh, when those stripers hit. It's not, you talk about them knocking the plug out of the water. That's not uncommon at all. I guess they're coming up at such a speed to nail what they think is a bait fish on the surface. When they get there, they probably open their mouth, but they push a lot of water. And I've seen them knock those things out of the water a couple of feet, and I know you've seen it a million times. Really.
Oh, I get so excited talking about it. It's just so much fun. See, we're blind casting, folks, and I tell everybody, anytime your plug is in the water, you're in the strike zone. I've seen people finish a cast and lift their plug out of the water, and I've seen a striper come from nowhere and grab that plug, that rod wraps against that gunnel, you haven't got a chance. It goes zzz, zzz, pow, because he's got all the power.
That happens, and most game fish are not like that. I mean, they're not. I mean, a largemouth bass hit a plug right at the edge of the boat. I've never experienced that. Many times I've had stripers when you go, okay, I'm gonna pull my plug out of the water and make another cast. When that thing clears the surface, have one grab it. So they are there for. I've fished up in Canada quite a bit, up in Saskatchewan, and I've talked to those guides up there, for pike and all that. That's what's up there, walleye and grayling, And I've had them say, talking about stripers, down there in Texas, and on the eastern seaboard, they fight you all the way to the boat. I've had them say that, and that's the truth
that's
too.
Right.
Well, Bill, right. Thanks for the update, man. This week I want to. Striper Express is easy to find. Facebook, or what's the best way to contact you?
Well, you can call us, folks, at 903-786-4477. That is 903-786-4477.
Or striperexpress.com, right, Bill?
Yes, sirree.
Yep. Well, thank you, sir, for being with us, and a real good striper update this week. Talk to you real soon, and I'll be fishing with you real soon, Bill.
You betcha.
Folks, that about wraps our show up for this week. I've enjoyed being with you, and I hope you've had a good time, too. And, folks, we're also brought to you by the Choctaw Hunting Lodge up in southeast Oklahoma, located about, 45 minutes west of Hugo, Oklahoma, owned by the Choctaw Nation. It's about 45,000 acres of awesome mountain, country, hills, valleys, loaded with game. Lots of eastern turkey, and they do eastern turkey hunts if you're looking for a spot to hunt turkey in the spring. Also, I want to remind you about the Seneca 50 caliber Dragon Claw that shoots bullets and pellets. And by pellets, I'm talking about 200 and 210 grain lead, chunks of lead. It's a big bore air gun that I use. Check out the Seneca Dragon Claw there at PyramydAir.com.